if you were to challenge Mr. Levant and prove where he's wrong.
Indeed, we have debated Mr. Levant in the past, and we did send Mr. Dufresne the last time we were asked.
It wasn't a debate, Commissioner.
Pardon me?
It wasn't a debate.
No, but we have engaged in debate with Mr. Levant. The question is, when do you send the chief commissioner of a quasi-judicial agency, in what forum, and how can we best get our message across? My role is to serve Canadians and to advise Parliament, and the debate is really, it's not about Mr. Levant. It's a debate for all Canadians. We're here answering your questions as soon as you start to ask them of me, and we will do so with Parliament. And at the end of the day, we're serving Parliament and only here to give our best advice.
Ms. Lynch, I have begun to ask, and these are the questions. Again, I say there were no parameters as to what I would ask, and so I'm asking the questions that I believe are relevant. But you're right. Let me just say this to you. I'm not a surrogate for Mr. Levant, and I will not behave as a surrogate for Mr. Levant, but that was relevant questioning as far as I'm concerned. But you have concerns about your critics in the media, some of whom you reportedly chastised in a Montreal speech earlier this week by describing them as, quote, unwitting accomplices in a gross oversimplification of the issue who flamed the controversy by repeating inaccuracies, end quote. If that is an accurate quote, please specifically tell us how a gross oversimplification of the issue has in fact taken place.
Thank you for that question. Let me put this in context for a minute. Our responsibility is to give effect to the purpose of the Canadian Human Rights Act, which is really equality for all Canadians. It's very lyrically written in our statute. It is to give effect to the principle, and I quote, that all individuals should have an opportunity equal with other individuals to make for themselves the lives that they are able and wish to have, free from discrimination. And we do that by receiving complaints, and we are a filtering body, a screening body. We're not a tribunal. We do not hold hearings. We receive in the neighborhood of 700 complaints per year, and we forward about 15% of those only to the Human Rights Tribunal. 40% of the complaints that we receive are related to issues that persons with disabilities have. Only 1.5% of the complaints that come in have anything to do with the section in our Act that relates to hate on the Internet. And so what's been happening here in the coverage of this 1.5% of our annual workload on half of the side of what we do is a misdescription of the ambit and scope of what we call Section 13, hate on the Internet.
Okay, Ms. Lynch, you've been criticized by members of Parliament. You've been challenged by civil liberties organizations. This is an important issue. I don't care, and most of us don't care if it's a fairly low percentage number of what it is you do. It is the issue that ultimately receives most attention. And I appreciate the fact that you've given us an overview of what you do. But let me put it this way to you. Given the controversy that the Canadian Human Rights Commission and its provincial counterparts have created, which reaches into Canada's Parliament, includes many in media and the general public, coupled with the calls for the Commission's responsibilities and jurisdictions to be reduced and redefined, would you agree that perhaps the Commission has been at the very least clumsy in getting its message out?
You talk about a controversy that the Commission's created, and I would put it to you that I
didn't say it was created. I said controversy surrounds the Canadian Human Rights Commission.
Well, here's the issue. There's been a mischaracterization of administrative law and the procedural guarantees that one has before human rights tribunals. There have been many allegations repeated in the media as fact, and there's been confusion between the role of the Commission and private individuals. Now, the one case that has been very much in the media was a case that we received, screened and dismissed. It related to an excerpt of publication that was published online by Maclean's magazine. And because Section 13, our hate provision, is a very narrow provision, our we are relying on the Supreme Court of Canada definition of hate, we dismiss this case. End of story. However, what blew up from this was a chorus of boos, if you will, and a huge assault on our commission and others across the country for simply doing what is legislatively required.
So this was a by the numbers investigation.
Pardon me?
This was a by the numbers investigation.
I don't know what you mean by a
Well, you didn't do anything that was out of the ordinary in this investigation. The fact that there was a tremendous amount of national exposure and, if you will, media exposure to this case did not affect how it ran its course.
That's correct. It's the parties to the complaint exchange documents, witnesses are interviewed, a summary is put forward, and with their submissions to our commission, the commissioners make a decision, just as we do with every other case.
Commissioner, I have to ask you this. Can you stay with us a few minutes longer, because there's some questions that I know you're going to want to deal with and that we haven't had a chance to really address?
Yes, I can.
Okay, because we're going to take a break and then we'll continue with you for a few minutes longer.
All right.
I think it's important that we do this, that we cover the areas and you say that you want to be transparent and open with Canadians, and I appreciate that. But I want to say this to you quickly. I have not approached this interview with you in an attacking fashion. I'm looking for information. I find you to be unnecessarily defensive, Commissioner, and I just want to make that point. I'm just looking for information. I'm not attacking you. I'm just looking for information for my listeners.
And I'm happy to provide the information.
All right. Stay with us, please. The Chief Commissioner of the Canadian Human Rights Commission on the Roy Green Show on the Corus Radio Network. There are some other issues that we want to get into with the Commissioner, and, in fairness, I want to ask her about Section 13, the Human Rights Act, and there have been calls in Parliament for the Commission to have fewer responsibilities in that regard. And I do want to address this question, and I want to hear the Commissioner's response about the CHRC, the Canadian Human Rights Commission, perhaps joining neo-Nazi organizations online and sending out hundreds of emails. This is important, and whether or not the Commission, in fact, has funded any of the complainants. It's an important issue for all of us in this country.
Everybody's talking at me. I don't hear words they're saying. Only the echo.
Roy.Green at Coruscant.com is my email address. Our guest is Jennifer Lynch. She's the Chief Commissioner of the Canadian Human Rights Commission. Earlier in the segment, we heard from Ezra Levant, who may very well be the Commission's number one challenger, and the Commissioner just does not have the intent or the interest in debating Mr. Levant, and that's why we're doing the segments as we have done them. I offered the Commissioner the opportunity to go first or to follow, and the Commissioner chose to follow, and I can't fault her for that. That's probably what I would have decided to do as well. So, Commissioner, let's go to something, though, that Mr. Levant brought up, and it's been talked about, and it's been written about, and we need clarification from you on this. Does the Canadian Human Rights Commission, in fact, use staffers to join neo-Nazi organizations online and then to create the kind of dynamic that was explained to us by Mr. Levant? And if you do so, tell us why you do it and what the eventual outcomes of these exercises have turned out to be.
The answer is no, we do not do that. The task that has been given us by Parliament in our legislation is to investigate hate on the Internet, and just taking a snapshot of what that really is. This is not simply offensive discussion. This is extremely hateful, calumnious language. It's been determined so by the Supreme Court of Canada. That's the definition we use. In the past, our investigators had gone onto these sites and logged on in an attempt to investigate. We no longer do that. We do not post hate, we have not done it, and we would not condone it.